Colorado. He's a member of the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman, let's just start with the simple basic here. Are you still a no on this bill?
I am a very strong no, yes.
So many Americans over the holiday weekend were probably relieved to learn that there had been a deal struck in order to avoid very real economic catastrophe. If Republicans refuse to vote for this and the U.S. ultimately defaults because McCarthy's not able to deliver the votes, how do you explain that to the American people?
Well, first of all, Jake, this bill will pass. Some Republicans will vote for it. Some Democrats will vote for it. It will go to the Senate. It will pass in the Senate. It will be signed by the president. The United States will not default. The devil is in the details in this bill. Republicans are saying that there's a few billion here and a few billion there that we are saving. Only people in Washington, D.C. believe that you can save a few $billion and spend and go into debt $4 trillion more. When the American people understand that our debt is going to rise to $35 trillion by the end of 2024, they will be aghast that anybody could support this bill.
So Congressman Chip Roy, your colleague, Republican from Texas, he today made the strongest threat yet to Speaker McCarthy's gavel. He told conservative commentator Glenn Beck that if this bill cannot be killed in Rules Committee or on the floor of the House, quote, then we're going to have to then regroup and figure out the whole leadership arrangement again, unquote. Are you on that page as well? Would you support an effort to oust Speaker McCarthy?
I have not made any commitment. I think it's premature to start talking about the motion to vacate, but it is certainly something when you get a large percentage of Republicans that will not vote for this bill, and at the same time you have the Speaker talking about how it is historic and it's a huge win for conservatives, and we are stopping the out-of-control spending in Washington, D.C. I was at Memorial Day events, and when the word about $4 trillion leaked out, people are furious. This is a bill that I think is going to be on the level of Obamacare when you talk about the amount of anger that the American public is going to feel.
Some progressive Democrats, as you probably know, they're also not thrilled by this bill. They're angry with President Biden, not necessarily with Speaker McCarthy. If Republicans force even more concessions, it could push more Democrats away, make this deal even harder to pass before June 5th, the likely default date, not to mention it won't be able to get through the Senate. Is it not possible that this is the best that can be gotten right now with Democrats controlling the Senate and the White House?
Well, you're asking me at the end of these negotiations. There was never a time when Republican members had input with Speaker McCarthy to give him some feedback on where this was going. So do I think it's too late? No. There's always the possibility of a $500 billion clean debt ceiling so that this can be renegotiated without what some people would call a catastrophe. I'm not sure just how bad it would be, but there are all kinds of mechanisms that can be put in place to make sure that we get a better deal. I don't think the idea of cutting certain programs is bad. The idea that we're going to raise the debt limit by $4 trillion, that's what concerns so many people.
Well, how much do you think it should be raised?
Well, for one thing, I don't think you should pick a date. All they did was say January 1st, 2025. It could go up to $5 trillion. I think what you've got to do is you've got to say, we'll raise the debt ceiling, $1.5 trillion. We'll take these cuts. We'll do appropriations bills and see where we are after the appropriations bills.
But wasn't Massey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was part of this deal that all the appropriation bills, the normal process, has to happen in order for this bill it's just a key provision, right?
No, Jake. What's going to happen, and I think most people recognize what's going to happen is the House will pass 12 appropriations bills. They'll go to the Senate, and what happens every year, the Senate will pass an omni. And actually, we'll wait until just before Christmas to try to force members to vote for the omni right before Christmas. So I don't think you'll see 12 appropriations bills pass the Senate.
So the last question I have is, look, if one accepts the premise that $33 trillion of debt is not good, and the United States as a general principle should not be spending more money than it takes in, why not work with Democrats in the Senate and then actually come up with a compromise, a way that figures out how to fix this problem, as opposed to Democrats only talking to Democrats, Republicans only talking to Republicans, et cetera?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think we have to, and it's called a budget committee. We have Republicans and Democrats on the same committee. I think it has to be bicameral as well as bipartisan, but you're absolutely right. Well, what we need to pick a number that doesn't just balloon debt, and then we have to make the hard choices. How much do we want to cut defense, and how much do we want to cut social spending?
Yeah, I mean, on that subject, I mean, do you find it surprising that the defense budget is even bigger now than it was when we were fighting two wars?
I think I am surprised by it, number one. And number two, there's a lot of fat at the Department of Defense that we can cut. The procurement process and other areas we should be looking at very hard. There hasn't been a single committee in the House that has looked at wasteful spending. You can't be serious about appropriating money if you can't hold hearings and look at wasteful spending.
Yeah, well, 60 Minutes did it a few weeks ago. Maybe that's a good place to start. Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado, always good to have you on, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Republican presidential candidate